Grid, what is going on? Today, I've got Phil Blake from Detroit, Michigan with me.
That's
He is
right.
the CEO of Stride Investment Group. And Phil, man, thanks so much for joining us today. I appreciate you taking the time.
Of course, man. Of course. Anytime for you, brother.
So I wanted to get you on here because over the last year and a half, right, maybe almost as long as 2 years,
Yeah.
we've gotten to know each other a little bit off-site, gotten to learn a little bit about your heart, gotten to learn a little bit about your business, and I've been impressed with what you've been able to do. And I want to share you with our audience. I want to share you with Grid and learn from you, learn a little bit more about your journey, get into the nitty-gritty of the journey. I don't know all the nitty-gritty of the journey. And so, but why don't we just kind of calibrate a little bit right now and tell us where your business currently is. What does your business look like today? And then we'll go back in time.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. So again, I'm owner of Stride Investment Group. We actually have a small team. It's only about seven of us right now. We got some people that do some work for us overseas, but for the most part, of course, seven of us here. At this point, we pretty much do 100 transactions each year. Pretty sustainably. In addition to that, this year we actually set a goal. So we'll go back into the history, but in short, we haven't purchased very many properties for a holding right over the years. So this year we made a more focus on that. So we started with 30 and we bought like 10 like in January. So we upped it to 50. So we're going to be buying 50 this year. So that's all on the single family side. There's a commercial division as well where, we look at apartment buildings and even some quick service restaurants as well. So I don't know if that's enough information or how much.
Yeah, actually, well, let me ask you some questions around that. So 100 transactions primarily, then wholesale transactions. Is that what it's been, or is it okay? 100%, or has it been like 90% wholesale, 10% fix and flip?
So no, pretty much we're wholesalers, right? So we very little. Well, up until this point, we've been primarily wholesalers. Now we're like, we do buy and hold. So, pretty much all 100 or so have been wholesale deals. And then we'll do, right, like, for example, this year's going to be substantially more, right? We probably do like 75, 80 wholesales, and then we'll do the 40 or 50 that we buy and keep.
Good for you. Like, because at the end of the day, like what we talk about at Grid all the time is that real investing happens with the buying and the holding, right? The earned income is generated through wholesaling or running an investment real estate agent team like I run, or in construction, right? That's all earned income. What we got to do is we got to take that earned income and buy assets for long-term wealth accumulation. So we'll dive into that. Let me understand a little bit about where you currently buy. So you buy in Detroit.
Yep.
You buy in North Carolina. Is that what I saw?
Yep. So we're all exactly. So all over Metro Detroit. So Detroit and then the whole suburban area around it. And then Charlotte and Raleigh as well, North Carolina.
Awesome. And is everything pretty much done virtually? You guys do everything over the phone?
Yeah, man. A lot of these properties I've never even seen before. So
okay, cool. So that's awesome. We'll have to delve into a little bit around the mechanics around that. Okay.
Sure.
So how did you start? Tell me how you got the bug, right? What was the first deal? How did all this begin? And by the way, let me just congratulate you. 100 transactions, it's a lot of transactions. Like, people need to understand, there's a lot of systems and models that have to be built just to get to 100, right?
Sure.
Where you're just kind of doing it as machine. And now you're taking that and you're buying long-term assets. So 10 years from now, like the journey that you're on right now, like it's going to be a whole different game that we're going to be talking about 10 years from now.
Right.
So it'll be great to revisit. But how did you get started? Walk me through.
So before I go into how I get started, so one thing I always like, anytime, that's like I think it's a magic number. Oh, you do 100 deals, at least in certain groups, it's like a magic number. And every time I tell someone we do 100 transactions or near or above it, it's like I always give them this piece of information with it. I was like, that the first year we did 100 transactions, we was all primarily in Detroit. Our profit per deal was very low. It was like, I think it was like 8,500. So we barely broke $1 million and did 100 transactions, right? So, you get a lot of people now that, especially with the guru and stuff like that, like 100 transactions and it's like fluff KPIs. At the end of the day, it's about what's your revenue, right? And really what's your net profit if you want to get into it. that year, and this is what forced us to go into a different market. That's why we went to North Carolina, because the margins would be bigger. But I would much rather do one deal a year and make, let's say, a couple $1,000,000 than as opposed to doing 150 or 125 deals, because that's a lot of, like you mentioned, Rob. That's a lot of churning and burning. A lot of some people get burned out. It's a lot of stuff that has to happen, even when you have the right systems, right? You got systems, processes, but you got to have people. And so I always kind of just throw that in there, because so many people hear that and just like, oh man, I just want to do 100 transactions.
That's right. That's right. But at the end of the day, profit's what matters more than anything else, right?
100%.
And yet you make a valid point, right? Once you get to, when you're doing 100, there's, you got motivation of a team. You got to know how to manage a team. You got to hire a team. You got to retain that team. Like, there's a lot of business building. Volume creates the ability to learn actually how to run a business, right? And that's what's cool about it. And then you calibrate along the way, and then you start learning things like, hey, can we increase our profit per deal? Can we do one deal and make $1 million versus 100? Should we buy and hold versus doing 100 transactions? How do we end up owning 100 that we keep, and just enough to keep the lights on from the agent or wholesale business, right? I say agent just because that's my machine, right? And what you've done is you've built a machine, right? I call it that 30, 60, 90-day machine. And now you're kind of taking it to the other side. You're flipping that income to the passive income side.
100%.
So thank you for sharing that. So how did you get started? How did you decide, hey, this is what I woke up one day and I'm going to be a wholesaler, I'm sure. Right.
So let's go back to some history. So, and I didn't know this at the time. This is me looking back. This is me like retroactively looking at my life, right? Even when I was around 11, 12 years old, I didn't have this thought as clearly as I'm about to explain it, but I kind of always knew I really didn't want to work like at a desk job. It just didn't seem like it was right. I couldn't comprehend it completely, but I already kind of knew that. And a quick short story, actually, when I was 15 years old, I got into an entrepreneurship program, right? It was inner city for the kids, and we were like selling candy and water, and it's supposed to be about entrepreneurship. I'll tell you this, that 100% turned me off from ever wanting to own a business. Because the guys that we were dealing with, like, they're dealing with us kids, and like they didn't have the image, right? That you like for example, a lot of people get, oh, you got the money or you got the cars, and then you talk about sports and entertainment and stuff like that. It didn't have that pizzazz. So me being in that group, it was like, okay, I 100% don't want to do that. So anyway, so that's a quick background from where I'm coming from, right? So it really didn't get bit per se until I think it was like 21, maybe 22. And it really came from actually one of my business partners now, but a good friend of mine. He had more direction in his life. I had very little direction in terms of entrepreneurship. For me, it was you go to school, you go to college, you get a good job, and that's it, right? Once you got it, hey, you've made it, right? That was what the peak was. In his life, he had a little bit more guidance in terms of people had owned rental properties and businesses and stuff like that. So he would explain things to me. He wasn't very, like, he just knew what he had been told. So he would say stuff and it just made sense, right? As far as like owning real estate, or we started reading a couple of books together and things like that. So I'm very logical in the way that I think. So when I read something and I'm like, that makes sense. Oh, okay, and then Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right, makes it clear for everyone, where it's like, oh, that makes perfect sense. Where it's like, why, even if you have a W-2, why is that the end all be all, right? Why would you stop there, right? So that's what got me interested in that there being something more, right?
What did you go to school for?
Mechanical engineering.
Yeah. The logical thinking, right?
Yeah. So if I wasn't logical at that point, I was definitely very logical after coming out of that. So yeah, very process oriented, logical. And again, it's, and naturally I'm more introverted. And then obviously in business, it kind of forces you to become a better person, become more well-rounded. So I'm not like super introverted, but that's just my natural way. And you have to know that about yourself, right? So that way you can be, you can kind of become the chameleon, right? And kind of change the way that you are in certain situations. But that's, I don't know what the other questions you got, but I can go much deeper if you want. But that's
okay. So you went to college, got your mechanical engineering degree, and then you started reading some books, and Rich Dad Poor Dad being one of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
That kind of started walking you down this different path from
Yeah,
mechanical engineering, right? Like, did you go get out of college and get a mechanical engineering job, or did you do something else?
man, that's an excellent question. This is actually a big part of so me naturally. I'm like a what do you call it? Do more, I go to extra mile in a lot of different things that I do. So the short story is I actually got hired as quote unquote an engineer before I actually graduated. So at the time that I learned about like, hey, real estate and you can make money, you can do this, it's passive income, you make a lot of money and stuff like that. Before I even knew about that, I was actually still in school full time because I hadn't finished school, right? I was actually working full time because again they hired me before I technically graduated, so I was still doing that. And then I got my friend. He's telling me about we're reading these books, and it's kind of making sense to me at that point. So that's where I was when I like discovered, okay, I want to do something with do something with real estate. But what really attracted me, what really bit me, was the fact that what do I want to put it? But basically, I began with the end in mind, and that me naturally, right? So I actually learned later that that's like one of the key principles for success. But I'm looking, okay, I got this job, and it was a really good job. At that point, I was probably making almost six figures, and I was like 22. I was still in school, actually, you know what I mean? So I was living in my mom's basement, all that stuff, right? So I had extra income and stuff, and I thought I was doing everything right, just save the money, don't get a new car. My car was like 12 years old, so I'm doing all that stuff. Going back to beginning with the end in mind, what I was doing is like, okay, I got this job. All right, I make a good salary. What is my end goal, right? My family does not come from money, right? So we didn't have generational money, so I wasn't expecting anything there. So I'm going into it like, okay, probably gonna have to take care of mom and dad at some point, right? I have a brother who has a mental disability, so I'm like, probably gotta take care of him. And then on top of that, just certain things I want to achieve. So I looked at that and said, okay, is this job gonna get me there? And I was like, it probably could if I became like the VP, CEO, or something like that. But I don't even really, I didn't really care for it as much, right? My parents told me I was gonna be an engineer when I was in the fourth grade, so so that's what that, right? So then I'm all right. Real estate. Oh man, I can make 50 grand here, and then I can get passive income. Oh, I can actually start to make money without me doing anything. All right, so that's what bit me, right? That's what got me attracted and took me into the next steps that we'll go over.
That's so interesting. I was consulting with Gary Keller, and we're
Nice.
talking about expansion. Like, how do you expand around the globe? And he essentially forced us to kind of do that exercise and say, listen, you gotta scale this out all the way to the end, right? Begin with the end in mind. What does this look like at the end of all of this? And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna break it down, right? You break it down in
100%.
region. Like, if you're gonna look at the US first, you'll just say, okay, what are the regions in the US? What would those leaders have to make in order to have a big opportunity in their life? What would that have to look like? What does math look like for that? And then he just literally broke it all the way back down to its first element, right?
Yep.
And then he said, okay, that's the path is in the math. That's the roadmap. And now you just start executing, right? So
Yep.
it's so cool that you actually did that at 23 or 24 years old, and you asked yourself that question, because I find that so many times we fall into these patterns. Like, we're told we got to go to school, we get that mechanical engineering job, I'm going to go get the job, and like, you're just doing things for the sake of doing.
Yep.
People
100%.
aren't thinking about what does this end look like,
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
I know I didn't think that way, man. So kudos to you for thinking that. So, okay, here you are. You've got your mechanical engineering job while you're in college. You start reading about real estate. What do you do? Do you take that job? Do you do a year of that job? Do you decide, screw it? Like, I mean, what happened? It sounds like
Awesome.
you started right out of school.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, I was still in school, so I was like, okay, this is. I know it's gonna take. I know you got people say, oh, you can make money in real estate without money, but it's easier when you got money. So I was like, all right, I got this job, and I just basically put myself on like an exit plan, and that plan changed over the years. It wasn't like, oh, I'm not gonna tell you guys the hero story of I said I'm gonna leave that job in 18 months, and I did it, right? No, at first I think I said like 2 years, and I didn't do it, and then I think I said like another year. It just kept happening, right?
Mm-hmm.
but that's because I was actually learning and growing. But at this point in time, right? So, okay, all right, I got the bug. I know I want to get into real estate. And it's funny, me and my partner, a commercial partner, we started at the exact same time, right? Our approach is totally different. He's more action oriented. So he's the type that'll, like, you give him something, he's just gonna go and do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, you make mistakes and whatnot from there. And I'm, again, as I told you, more practical engineering type. So I'm like, oh, let me go a little deeper, right? And I didn't even realize this at this point, but I was like, I know enough that I want to do it, but I don't know enough that I can go out and do it. So fortunately, again, I had enough common sense. I basically went out and found a mentor. So those times where I'm reading these books and things like that, I'm YouTube University, right? I'm going to YouTube, learning like the people. I was studying like really not the how to, but really it was like showing me what could be achieved and who knew what they were talking about. So it was like 2 or 3 people that I was looking at, and ultimately I ended up choosing one, and I made that initial investment. And it wasn't anything like, I remember exactly, he was offering it, and it was like, and again, it wasn't like a direct, like I had like right now, I'm in network with, you know, people like you guys and whatnot. I can call up, hey Rob, you know, and we can figure something out. I had none of that, right? So it was all from YouTube. So this guy had a program, and I think it was something like 3 or 4. I think it was like $3,000, right? And that was a lot for me. To put that in perspective, I had one credit card. The limit was $1,500, and I was like so skeptical and stuff at that point. I was like, all right, I'm definitely gonna buy this on a credit card, because if it's a scam, I get my money back, right? That's literally what I was thinking. So, that's literally what I'm thinking about, right? So yeah. All right, so I bought it. And even at that point, I said, man, $3,000 is a lot. So I hadn't done it before, so I'm slow to execute. He had this special. I went to the webinar, he had a special. Oh, only $1,000. You can get like the course stuff. I'm like, okay. So I put $1,000. Oh, but if you want all the training and all this other stuff, it was like another 2,000 or 3,000 at that point. So anyway, it was like $3,000 or $4,000 at that point. But I maxed my credit card out twice, paid it off, maxed it out again, because I was like, you know, what could happen? Coming from that, right. So coming from that, I mean, he taught me a lot of what I know about real estate today, in terms of like how to invest, how to be an investor, all the creative ways that you can make money in real estate. And most importantly, he taught me the things, like he was answering questions that I didn't know I was supposed to ask, right? Mm-hmm. This is really important because, like I said, my partner now, we literally took 2 different paths. So that was the path I took, right? He was like, all right, I read these books. I'm about to go buy these houses at the auction. I'm going to go fix them up, and I'm either going to sell them or I'm going to rent them, right? So our paths were different. Ultimately, we ended up getting pretty close to the same spot, and both pretty successful. But the paths were different, right? A lot more mistakes. I know he has some, you know, we all bump our heads, but a lot of that stuff I missed. I still have my own learning lessons, right? Like, again, I'll let you go ahead and guide you with the question.
No, it's so fascinating because I totally see it, right? Like, I'm a mix between you and your friend. I'm literally a mix between you and your friend. And, which is what saved me, I think, a lot during the financial crisis that came around. Because I started my investment journey in the year 2000, or 1998, 99. That's where I did a lot of my learning for about 4 or 5 years. I was part-time while I ran another business.
Okay.
And then, and I did like a Robert Allen class, nice. $7,000 or something like that. And I knew more than the mentor. So my mentor, I was like, I knew more than the mentor by this time, because I'm a studier, I'm a analyzer, I'm a, you know, like I've just, you know, and I'd done a lot of deals. I'd done more deals than the mentor at this point, nice. Right? But I was so determined to get back my return on the money that the physical act of paying the money motivated me to get my ass out there to go get some deals done. Right. And so, like, in the end, it was a good thing. And I learned, I did learn from the course. But it's interesting because I could see the path of your friend, and your friend is going to learn from making a lot of mistakes, and you're going to learn through mentorship to avoid a lot of those mistakes. And ultimately, you know, the two of you will meet, but one's a lot more painful than the other one, right?
Somebody said you have to learn from mistakes, but it doesn't have to be your own. That's for sure. Man.
That's it. Which is the purpose a lot of what we do here, right? Is for people to learn, so that they don't have to make those same mistakes, right? They can take these lessons learned, like, you know what, you should think about getting a mentor. Like paying the $3 or $4 grand up front to have somebody direct you is an investment to save you from losing 30 or 40,000 by making the wrong mistake,
Oh yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I've done my fair share of that as well.
Yeah.
Right. So, okay. So here you are, you take this gentleman's course, you get a mentor. He's essentially giving you questions that you should be asking that you didn't know, right? Give me an example, one of those questions. Like what was something that he made you reflect on and you're like, oh yeah, shoot, I should have thought about that.
Oh man, that's a good question. Man, that's like 8 or 9 years ago now. But it wasn't just necessarily just questions. Like for example, right? Let's talk about creative finance. Not a lot of people like you're not in the real estate space. You don't really know about creative finance. So you know, like, oh, you can buy a property subject to, or you know what I mean, or seller financing in terms and all this stuff. You can structure a deal this way. I mean, at that point, it was eye-opening to me. You mean to tell me I can make money off this property and I didn't own it? You know what I mean?
Oh,
So
he opened your mind to things that you didn't even know was there.
Exactly.
You didn't even know it was there. Yeah.
Exactly. So, because at that point, and I think if you ask the average person, and I may be giving too much credit or not enough credit, but I think you ask the average person, like, how do you make, if you were to invest in real estate, how do you do that? They would say you buy a house, you fix it up, and you sell it. Or you buy a house and rent it, or buy it, fix it up and rent it, right? And that's it. And that's pretty much what the extent of my knowledge was like, yeah, you know. So once he said, oh, no, you don't have to, you know, you don't have to even own the house if you don't want to. I'm like, oh, really? So then those type of, you know, so it was questions and things he was asking as well. It was just like the principles and the foundations of what he was explaining was like, oh, I didn't even know this was a thing here, right? And yeah, we were doing all type of stuff, but no, he's very excited. Mm-hmm.
How did you end up then deciding to cut the cord? Because here you're holding on to this job, right, as a mechanical engineer, and at some point you made a decision. How did that decision come about?
Well, so I'm really big in manifestation, right? You manifest your reality before it happens. So I already knew I was going to be doing it. It was just a matter of when. So at this time, so specifically what I said earlier is that mentor taught me how to invest, right? He didn't teach me how to run a business, even though he probably could have. He didn't teach me how to run a business and to a very limited degree systems and processes. So at that point, I still kind of got the W-2 mindset, right? Haven't actually made a lot of money. We'll talk about that in a moment. But I'm thinking about it like, okay, so I got this job where pretty much every couple of weeks I'm gonna get paid. I make like, in my paradigm, in my family, I already made it. You know what I mean? You make it all, and I'm starting, right? So they're looking at that like you making on the low end 80, 85, on the high end maybe 100, 105,000 a year. Great job, great company, great benefits, all of that stuff, right? So at that point, technically, I'm coming from that mindset. So okay, I'm gonna give that up for what, right? Okay, so at this point, I'm doing everything myself, right? Very early on, so I'm thinking about it to the extent of, okay, so how much? I'll give you exactly what happened the first time I actually thought about it. We were all meeting up. Somebody in that group had closed a deal and made like 90 grand or 95,000, right? And he quit everything. He was like, I'm out, I'm done, I'm all into real estate. And I was happy for him, and I was like, man, that's cool. But I started thinking about myself, like, if I close a deal for 90 grand, would I stop everything? And again, this goes back to personality traits. I'm more conservative naturally, being more practical, right? Some people don't matter, but for me, I'm looking like, okay, I got a job, good job, I got benefits, okay. About 90 grand, that's probably not it. You know what I mean? I was like, that's a good payday. Now I can maybe speed up and get further success, get success faster. I probably wouldn't quit. So I started asking myself, like, all right, what is that number? Is it 250? Is it 500,000? And the big thing that I kept coming back to was, like, damn, I don't, you know, what happens if I don't go on a vacation? You know what I mean? Money stops, you know, or, you know, deals slowing up or whatever. You know, I didn't have any cushion there, right? And at that point, that's because I didn't know and I didn't even think to ask the right questions about systems, processes, and people, you know? And that's actually what led me to my next mentor a few years later, because one guy was talking about he closed 100 deals flipping, not wholesale, but flipping. And he worked like 3 hours a week. was like, what? Oh, what? I'm like, all right, but but yeah, that's what kind of got me to that point, right? To start asking. So I actually did not quitting for like, it took me like, sheesh. I just quit a few years ago.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And so how many deals do you think you did before you decided, okay, I'm going to quit?
All right. So I'm going to come back to that. So how many deals? I'm going to answer it first, but I'm going to tell you the whole story. So how many deals do I think I did before we quit? Let's see. We probably did maybe like 150, but but like 100 of them, maybe like 130, let's say. But most of them came like the year before I quit. Okay.
Got it.
But one thing to say, because again, I know that we're focusing on the journey. I want to make something clear, because again, I thought I was doing everything right when I started. Right, I got the job. I basically got almost no expenses. Like no expenses. I got this old car, living at home, all this type of stuff. Right. I'm literally putting everything into. I was paying some student loans at that point, but between that, I'm literally putting everything into real estate. Right, marketing, learning, setting up systems, phones, and all this other stuff. Figuring it out, and I'm balls to the wall the whole way, right? After I got, and this is no knock on the mentor, so there's something that I think a lot of people don't talk about, is like mental glass ceilings, right? If you don't believe you can do something, or don't think you're worth it, like something like that you don't believe that's something that you can have, then you won't have it, right? And again, coming from the background I come from, it wasn't like we had a lot of money, so I was just used to always like, money is always limited. It's a scarce resource. It's hard to come by. These are things that were in my subconscious, right? And it's funny, he actually told me this, that first mentor. He told me, it's like, you got to have a good relationship with money. And if you got a bad relationship with money, you got to check yourself, because it's something that's probably one of the things that took me the longest to be able to overcome. But the point is, after setting up everything, again, I was working full time, school full time, and I'm doing this as well. So that probably has something to do with it. But I really didn't make any money for like almost 2 years. It might have been. I'm talking about, I'm spending money. I'm spending it. I'm thinking I'm doing everything right. I'm like, come on. So we got to and I'm, very, very perseverant. So I'm like not a quitter. I'm not just going to say, well, it didn't work in 2 months, I quit. And then you hear about other people, oh, they just started 2 months ago, they made 50 grand. I'm like, man, So I'm putting it in, and I'm calling people. I'm smiling and dialing. I'm done every position, right, that you could think of. And it's not like I was not having any success. I was counting the small successes. Oh yeah, we got this deal under contract. But let's say something fell through. Like I got to the point where I failed at every single point of a deal. Before the deal, after you get the deal, at the closing table, marketing the property, everything. I'm serious, right? You know what I mean? So it's to the point where actually I started to get a little bit defeated, but I was like, man, I just got to keep pushing through. I got to break through this ceiling, right? I know enough for that. But one of the things, so it got to that point, because again, I'm spending a lot of money. I get to the point where it's like, again, it's almost that 2 year mark. I don't remember, it was pretty close to 2 years. And it's a form of marketing that I would spend money on. And then you pay for it up front, and then you had so many credits. And I think I had like maybe $300 or $400 left. Each lead was like $400. And, just a quick tidbit, I'm really big into health, right? So it's to consult people with health, herbs, fitness, and all this other stuff, right? So that was like another quote unquote business in my mind, right? Not in my mind, I actually had invested and I was doing stuff with it. But again, that's focus, right? I already told you I'm working full time, school full time. And I only did the school full time. It's like the first year and a half. But point is, I'm doing all these different things. And now I'm doing health, learning, and helping people that, and I'm doing real estate. So that was another mistake I was making, didn't know I was making. And point is, so we get to this point where it was there 20 months or 22 months, whatever it's in, and I'm like $400 left. And I wasn't going to quit. Like, I never at a point, I only know this looking back, again, retroactively or retrospectively. But but at that time, like I never had a thought in my mind like, oh, I'm gonna quit, man. I'm gonna stop. It's not working. I never thought about that. But when I look back on, I was like, man, I probably was pretty close to like just not quitting, but I'm gonna transfer more energy into this health consulting thing, that's growing this business over here, right? And kind of just slowly, because I was like, man, I'm not making any money. Like, what's going on, right? I'm putting all this time, energy, and I'm out of school now, so I got more time while I ain't working. That type. So that's where I was at. So I remember I got down. It was like maybe it was our last lead. So this is exactly how the story went, man. You probably gonna laugh quite a bit. So we got the lead come through. Lead comes in. I talk to the lead. He's asking 50 grand for the property. I'm like, oh, okay, let me run the comps on this thing. You're probably asking too much. Run the comps on. Oh, okay, this property all fixed up is probably worth like 150. Okay, well, at this point, we're still going on appointments in person. Let me set up the appointment. Mentally, he probably ain't gonna be too busy to set up the appointment because I failed there before. All right, we set up the appointment. I go out to the appointment. Oh, the house probably gonna need like 100 grand worth of work. There's gotta be something. Mentally, this was going through my head. So we go through it just need to clean out. It ain't too bad, So I'm talking to him, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna offer him like 45. Offer him 45. And he pushed back a little bit, and I just went home and took it at 50. I was like, okay, that's cool. But it wasn't a big celebration because I got properties under contract before. So I'm like, all right, let's keep going through. Where's the next point of failure gonna go through? Probably the title gonna be all screwed up. Can't do nothing with the property. You know what I mean? I'm gonna start marketing the property, and something's gonna happen. Seller gonna get pissed because at this point, this is years ago. We used to just get them under contract and put them on the MLS, right? We had like the right verbiage and whatnot, but anyway, that's what we would do. He gonna get pissed because I didn't communicate right or something. I screwed something up. Put it on the market. And at this point, even when we got under contract for 50, at that point, I was mentally, when I look back on it, probably so not defeated, but like doubtful, I guess you could say. Like I thought all day we could probably sell this property for like 70, 75. But I'm like, man, I probably screwed up the numbers somewhere. Let's just put it up. I marked it up 10 grand. That was it. From 50 to 60, right? 59.97, right? Put it out there. And the first part I had a glimpse of like, all right, I actually might know what I'm doing a little bit, is when we put it out, literally within 15 minutes, the realtor, the flat fee listing agent that we called to put it up for us, he called me like, are all your deals like this? And I'm like, what do you mean? He was like, dude, our phones are melting. Our phones are blowing up. I got people calling me right now, So he started sending me text messages of all these people calling, and one guy wouldn't stop calling. And this is the part when I was like, all right, I'm feeling pretty good, right? Because then he sent me this screenshot. This guy was like, get me that guy's number now. So we got buyers yelling at these guys. So I just told you where I'm at, like honestly. But I'm all right. Let me fake it till I make it a little bit. So I'm like, oh, it happens on certain deals, I'm playing it super cool, right? I'm talking super cool. Hopefully he don't see this video. Yeah. But I'm playing it super cool. Like, well, this kind of happens, and we get different property. So I'm playing it cool, just building a relationship, right? Yep. So all right, so that goes through. So we get multiple offers, and at that point I was like, okay, I might know what I'm doing, but I was still kind of waiting for something to happen. I was waiting on something. All right, some BS gonna happen because that had happened to me before. So we go through the whole process. People making these offers. They gonna do an inspection and find something. We end up getting I think we sold it for like 92.5, right? That's what the highest offer came back at. And then we gotta do the city inspection. Waiting on something to happen there. All right, nothing ever happened. And it literally got to the point where we're at the closing table, and I'm just like, man, waiting. Like, I know something's gonna happen. I know it's gonna happen. And actually, I did bring that about because something ended up happening. It's like someone with his brother being in the hospital. I don't remember exactly, but the point is, all of a sudden the title company's like, oh no, we can't close this right now. Blah blah blah, all type of stuff, right? And we got to the closing table, but honestly, the only reason why I think that it ended up closing was because I think the seller needed me more than just as much as I needed him. I think he had the same thing going for him because after we had that hiccup, he said the same thing to me. Like that's what it was like looking in the mirror. He was like, "Oh man, I knew something was gonna happen. I knew
this was too good to be true."
Right. That's what the seller is telling me, and I'm telling him to his face, like, "Oh man, don't worry about it. This is just perfectly normal. Things happen, hiccups." Where to me, like in my mind, I'm literally like, "Man, I knew something was gonna happen." Right. So that was. Dude, I'm talking about every step of the way, doubt. And I doubted that deal until the money hit the bank account, right? As soon as the money hit the bank account, now I got my feet. I'm cool. Now I'm sitting up. I'm about to do this. I'm expert at this. I've been doing this for how long? I'm cool as hell. But anyway,
I love that story because what it did was it built belief, right? That was like that's probably what turned the switch for you. Yep, you were like, 100%. Oh, hey, wait a second. This is for real. Like I took this from beginning to end, and there's something about belief. How long, by the way, did it take you? How long was that period between the time you started kind of doing this and dabbling in it to the time you closed that deal? Was that 2 years?
Yeah, that was like 22 months, something like that. Like 20,
Ah,
and I was making, when I look back at it, because I asked myself, like, dang, even if you don't know what you're doing, you can't be that wrong, right? But it was like I think I was blocking myself, right, from
yeah.
certain opportunities, and then I would miss, like, because I had properties under contract. It was like, all right, can we get to the closing table? And then, I mean, we had closed some, but it was like almost breaking even, like, oh, let's just get it closed type of thing, so I can get past that mental barrier. We can close deals. But that was really the first one that really made any difference.
Any
And
real money? Like before that, you might have, like, after all your marketing and spend and everything, you were in the negative, right?
yeah, it was like I'm just spinning my wheels, 100%.
Yeah.
And one thing I want to point out before we continue is, like you mentioned about like your reality and the mental block behind it, or just understanding that. Like after I did that deal, it was like 2 months, maybe 3 months before we got another. Like that year, that had to be what, like 16. It might have been 16, but we did like 8 deals. So it took me like 2 years to get that first one done. But then that year I started closing, like, boom, this, because I know it's possible now, right? I actually believe that I can do it. And you know what I mean? So we start talking about, that's a really important piece. A lot of people just oh man, don't hit me with the fluff as far as mental and whatnot. No, man, that was a
It's
big.
everything. It's everything. I was actually having a discussion with our sales team this morning about um, how conviction, like, you have to be the first person you got to sell is yourself,
100%.
right? And you have to have the conviction that this is possible, and that the person that you is across the table, that you can help them, right? And if you don't transfer that conviction, then you're blocking this from happening. So you have to be convicted, right,
Yep.
in your belief.
100%. That's an
and,
incongruency.
yeah, that's right. And then that's right. And if you don't have that, I always tell everybody that there's this foundation of building a business, and it starts with the thinking mental piece first. And if you can't get past that piece, or you have to get through that piece, not past that piece, but through that piece, right?
Mhm. Yep,
And
exactly.
if you can get through that piece and get the belief, then you're off to the races. Then it's just like, okay, I believe now. But 22 months, man, is a long time. So I got to
Yeah.
say, like, good for
Yeah,
you.
that's
That
right. And I don't think it takes that long, even if you don't know what you're doing. And again, it was mistakes that I made. It's nothing against my mentor. I think that he still helps me now. But
I think most people on average, and people, it does take time. Like 6, 7 months, 8 months seems to be like the breakthrough for most people that I've talked to. Like, but that means that you had to go 6, 7, or 8 months with nothing, and most people um, had cut the cord, right,
mm,
on any kind of other income, as opposed
mm,
to, you kept your income. You were smart, right?
mm,
You're conservative. You kept your
yeah,
income coming in. um, I found that most people cut their cord and cut the cord, and they're like, I'm going to go do this first. They're like your friend, right? And
yeah,
I've got to make it happen. I'm going to burn the boats. And then it took them another 8 or 9 months, sometimes longer, before they made any income. So they had to go in the hole,
yeah,
which is a scary piece, right?
100%.
And I always tell this. I don't know if I've shared this, but, like, what happens to a lot of entrepreneurs is, um, I think it took me 4 years before I legitimately made more money in a net profit than my personal household expenses.
Mm, mm,
Right? Because people don't realize you've got two businesses that you're running at all times, right? You've got this household business, you
mm-hmm.
got this household expenses,
Yep,
and that actually determines how much you got to make, right,
right,
in the business side.
right, 100%.
And nobody talks about that, by the way. Nobody talks about that. So, like, my first year, I remember I made like 60,000 profit in the business, but it was a net loss in my household, right?
Mm,
Because my household income expense was like 120, buck 20, right?
mm,
Um, and so I was like, oh shit, like I got to make like 180
right,
to,
right.
to pay for like 120,000 and just paying the bills, right?
Yep.
And so yeah, nobody ever talks about that. It's interesting. I'm glad we touched on it a little bit because it's important. right?
100%, man. 100%. I mean, again, it's the path less traveled for a reason. I'll put it that way.
100%. Okay, so the belief occurred. You started doing these additional deals. You got like 8 deals happen, and then at some point, you probably said to yourself, "I need leverage, right? I
Yep.
need help." Who was the first person? What was the first leverage that you brought into the business?
I was a lead manager because at this point I'm doing everything, right? Call the
Mm-hmm.
person, talk to them, see if they're even interested, evaluate the deal, do the acquisitions piece of it, right? Comp the property, call them back, get the property in account. Like I was in every position at this point. So it was lead manager because, so continuing on, so I talked about my next mentorship, right?
Mm-hmm.
What, because I was like, okay, I'm making some money now. And then that's when that whole guy with the 95 grand or whatnot came up. And I started asking myself, well, dang, how is that possible? And I remember, this was lucky, I'm gonna call it, but it was like a natural thought process for me. It was, well, last time I had a big jump or in understanding or even profit was when I got a mentor and etc. Right. And every time I seem to go to these events, like it's like good energy, you meet good people, maybe we can set something up. I was like, all right, maybe I need to do more of that. So actually I started watching the podcast and I was like kind of sifting through them because I didn't want to spend a lot of time on ones I didn't like. But that's when I learned about the guys. Oh, I'm doing 100 flips a year and I'm working a couple hours. You know what I mean? So I was like, well, really? So I'm not some people first think, oh, you scamming, you lying, whatever, right? I was like, man, that's insane. Let me learn how. Right. And then that's when I learned, oh, you got to treat it like a business. You know what I mean? This is not just flip. And it was so funny. I didn't even know what the positions were called. I didn't know acquisitions were called acquisitions. I didn't know you had a role for somebody that like does transaction coordination. Like I didn't even know that was a thing. I didn't even know the roles. I was like, oh, really? So that's what got me at least thinking like, oh, okay, you hire people and that's not okay. Now I can see it. Cause at that point, remember I said, okay, is it 250? Is it 500? My number to leave or whatnot? At that point, I was like, okay, my number actually, as far as exiting, don't have to be as high if I got some consistency, if I got some, I got there's a system and process in place where I can see what's happening versus every day you hustling and grinding and where the next deal gonna come from.
Mm-hmm.
In case you get sick and everything stops. So,
How did you create the consistency? If somebody's listening to this and they're like, they're where you were before, where they are everything, right? Like in the E-Myth, you talk about like the person that's the chief bottle washer, the cook, they're the cleaner, they're the busboy, they're the waiter, they're the bartender, right? Like, and it's hard to create consistency when you're trying to do all things. I mean, it's just almost impossible. How did you create consistency in your business?
Man, that's an excellent question. Actually, we still struggle with consistency sometimes, but just on different levels. But to be able to, like, how did I create it? I mean, really, it was for me. The eye-opening thing was because once I understand something and it makes sense to me, I was like, oh, okay, I can just go do it. You know what I mean? So first part, I talked about hiring. So you had the lead manager. Oh, okay, now that thing over there is going on, I don't have to be doing that, so I can be focusing over here. Because if you think about you're a one-man show when I'm on the phone closing the deal or trying to close the deal, or at that time going out to a property, what's not happening, right? Nobody's talking to the title company to push the current deal through, right? No one's trying to sell the current deal. So things stop when I stop, literally minute by minute, right? So it was already very inconsistent. We very inconsistent that way. It's easier. It's a lot easier to start building consistency. So the first thing was the people, and then with the people, you can't just scale chaos at that point, right? So they got to have something in place. Now at this point, I'm part of other masterminds, so there's other people who have generated these things, right? Okay, this is what my lead manager does for me, and here's everything I have them do. Here's a system and process. So basically, it was a big cheat code, right? Where that's literally all I did. Like I wasn't like, oh, you're just super smart, you build this out. Like, no, you built this and it works. Yep. All right, can I have it? That's it. Literally, I'll read through it. Okay, this makes sense. Go do it. You know what I mean? And that's
people. One of my when I reflect back on my journey, I think one of the biggest regrets that I have was that I was such a thinker that I was always wanting to figure it out myself instead of saying who's done this before me at the highest level and let me just go ask them, right? And people will share with you, right? and or you could purchase their course, or you could do their mentor, like whatever it is. People have traveled this path, and all you got to do is paint by numbers, right? If you could follow instructions, like, do it. And so today I was having a discussion with my team. I turned to my director of marketing. I said, what do the very best in the world do in your position right now? Your job is to go find out, right? And I turned to my ISA inside sales manager, and I said, what's the very best in the world doing right now? You need to go find that out and go do that, right? And so it's like that, right? You got a cheat code from people that have already done it, but then you got to do the work, right? But before all that, you can't do this. You can't hire people unless you've got leads coming in, right? So what were your lead sources? Like, what'd you do? Direct mail, calling, texting?
So excellent question. So excellent. So at that point, because I'm doing everything and wait stuff stop and whatnot, it was a low volume game. You know what I mean? So I didn't need a bunch of leads, right? That was part of the reason how we, like you said, scaled in consistency. So marketing is a big piece of it for sure. But at the time when it was just me, that wasn't the bottleneck, right? It wasn't like, oh, I need more leads. Hell, you give me more leads, I'm drowning over here. You know what I mean? So I had to leave. Okay, I got now I can send them more stuff, right? So So it was a combination. It was what's this? This had to be maybe 17. So you figure definitely we're doing some cold calling. We're doing some direct mail, not a lot. I didn't even know people send out 20,000 mailers a month or 50,000. I didn't know that was a thing. You know what I mean? So we were doing like niche stuff. Plus I didn't have the money to spend that. So we're doing like niche marketing for like some direct mail, cold call. We weren't even doing SMS. Nope. We were doing Google. PPC is a big one where I was just doing what I could on leads, and that was it. So but once I had people in place where okay, I don't have to be just spending money and watch it sit in the CRM. You know what I mean? That was another thing. I had kind of a iffy CRM, but as opposed to having those leads come in and they just sit around because I'm not able to get to them. Once I had somebody else in place, I was able to start turning the throttle up on those things. And that's what built the consistency, right? Basically keeping the business running while I'm not, you know what I mean?
Yeah, everybody's got a role. Everybody's got activities that they have to do. Like it's a machine, 100%. Right? Input, right, and output. And it's like you're only as good as the machine that's been built, right? Yep. And what happens is on your journey, you're building a better and better and better machine. Like you learn a couple things, you go, oh, I put the wrong person into that cog in the machine, and I need a different personality type. And I've learned that this personality type works really well. And oh, by the way, I need to put him through the right training protocols and giving them the right scripts. And I gotta pour into these people. I can't just put them into the seat and say, good luck, right? Like which means that you have to not only pick the right people, and you have to provide the right training for those people.
100%.
And then you have to hold those people accountable, and you need to know what's expected, right? Like I think one of the big things that I learned on this journey was what are benchmarks? Like nobody had like a document of benchmarks. Like you don't know if a 4-minute mile is good, and unless people tell you like a 4-minute mile is really, really good. Right, like that's good, right? Like so what for me it was like, well, what is a typical inside salesperson? How many appointments do they book in a given week? Like I didn't know, right? So I had to go find out that information. And the way you're only going to get this information is by going out and seeking somebody that's built a big machine and say, hey, what does this look like at scale, right? What are your KPIs? So actually, let's get to some KPIs, right? For a 100 transaction business, what are some of the KPIs that you pay attention to in your business? What are like your top 3?
So a big piece. So we got marketing and acquisitions, right? So acquisitions, we keep it very simple because we close deals over the phone now, right? So all virtual. I only want to know a few different things. How many dials are you making, right? How many people did you actually, that's effort. That's what we call that, effort. How many people did you actually like take through a process, like were qualified or whatever? How many did you take through that process? How many offers did you make, right? I tell them I don't even care about the contracts because that's a lagging indicator. How many contracts? And if I only had to ask, only could go with one number, it would just be how many offers did you make, right?
Mm,
Because now I
mhm.
can see, like, all right, that tells me everything. You didn't make
That's
enough
gold.
offers, of course you're not gonna get the contracts, right? But I keep that very, and when we're doing training, I keep that very, like I keep reiterating that to them. Like for example, don't like one guy we had last week. He had 5 contracts that week, and when they report out results, especially if it's positive, we lift them up a little bit. But they know that's not the thing for me. Because if you tell me you called 5 people and you got 5 contracts last week, I mean, I'm asking different questions, right? Like, okay, what was that marketing and all that stuff, right? What did we do? But the point
Mhm.
is, my question is, what the hell else did you do with the other, whatever, 100 hours or whatever that you could have been doing? Like, what did you do? You're not putting the effort, and that goes against our core values. So that's a
Mm.
big for acquisitions. It's similar for marketing, right? When we're looking at, it's a little bit more complicated, but you're looking at different marketing sources, like where the deals are coming from. But basically, we're looking at the quantity of leads, how many are we getting, the quality of the leads. We measure that, right? So hot, warm, cold, too cold, etc. And
Mhm.
I mean that's pretty much it for marketing specific. Obviously, we look at the
Sure.
cost, like how much cost per deal, and you got stuff like that. But on a intrinsic level, because I'm assuming that we're within budget or at a point where we're spending money in the right places, if I'm evaluating each marketing source, I just want to know how many leads did you give us and what was the quality. Are you sending us a bunch of garbage, or are you sending us, good stuff?
Yep. So you end up getting a number, right? X amount of leads generates X amount of conversations,
Mm-hmm.
and those conversations generate X amount of offers. And that
Yep.
number you pay attention to, right? Like what's the lead number and how many offers that you put out. And by the way, what do you hold your acquisition team accountable to? How how many offers do you want them to do in order to hit the goals that they have?
Uh, Really, it's based on like, and it does vary a bit because some of the indicators kind of mesh within each other. But
Mm.
really, we're targeting 7 offers a day per rep, right? But
Seven
the reason
offers a rep.
exactly. But if you're it doesn't, like, if you don't hit 7, I call them as a target, not a goal, right?
Sure.
Because it fluctuates. For example, if you have a day where you made 7 offers, you know how that goes. You're in a conversation with people. You're doing your highest income generating activity, which is locking up a contract. And sometimes that can take an hour if the person's busy,
Sure.
etc. Stuff like that. So you may look at that. Well, naturally, if you have all those offers, your number of people that you like prospected that's probably going to drop, right?
Hmm.
And probably your dials is going to drop. So it has to make sense is the way we look at it. So it has to mesh well. For example, but we usually look at around 60, 65 calls a day is where we want to be. Well, like as an average, but if you have a day, I just look at your dials. If you tell me you called 200 people today, I'm okay. I'm gonna assume that you probably didn't talk to anybody. I mean, it's probably something going on, right? You
Hmm.
probably is looking for real, but I'm assuming you didn't talk to anybody. You probably didn't make any offers, but you put forth the effort. You called a bunch of people, and we got to dig into why so many people. But I can see that. But conversely, if you had a bunch of people where you're taking through the like prospect to understand if there's somebody we can close a deal with, if you got like 15 of those in a day, okay, so your numbers for offers and dials will fluctuate. And what happens is you get this rhythm to the point where you see, let's say day 1 somebody starts, they got a bunch of dials, right? And then let's say the next day they got a good, not as many dials, but they got a fair number of prospects, right, that they've talked to. And then the next day you got a bunch of people that they made offers to. So you started to get this rhythm where you can say, okay, I can see where you're at in your
Hmm.
cycle.
You know what we developed was a scorecard for everybody. Everybody in the organization has a scorecard. The business has a scorecard, and it has an appointment number, because
Okay.
that's the number that I track. It's like how many appointments, right, has the organization gone on, and then how many has each individual person gone on, and then I could say, oh, Phil's like the number of appointments it takes for him to close a transaction is 3. And then we know how you compare against the average, because I know kind of like what the average is, and I know
Mm-hmm.
like, and then we can kind of like guide to that. I'm curious, with your 7 a day as like a target, right, averaged out over time, what have you found? How many contracts, offers made? And by the way, the question is, when you say an offer is made, just a verbal offer, is it actually sending out an LOI? Like, what do you constitute as an offer? So that's one question. And the
Okay.
second thing is, how many of those are they making on average? Listen, if the rep's making 7, a day, they should get 1 contract. Like I don't know. Like I don't know the numbers
No,
for you guys.
that's actually that's very very spot on. So the first question is that what we can consider offer. I've talked to the person, I've qualified them that they actually deserve an offer, and then we got scripts that we take people through to make present the offer, right? It's not like, hey, here's the number. It's a little bit more to it than that, but we have a process we take them through, and then that's what we consider like an offer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how many of those is actually right at, well, most recently it's like 6.25 or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Historically, it's been closer to 5. So,
Mm-hmm.
Took an uptick there. But again, that's why we have 7 a day, right? Basically get a contract a day or at least be on pace. That like those numbers are not arbitrary is what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so then you give them the financial math for them to be able to know how much money they can make
Yep.
as acquisition specialists in the business, right? They're like, okay, well, if I put out X amount of offers, I can expect on average, this is how much money I'm going to make, right?
Exactly.
Which is so cool, right? There's predictability in their income. There's predictability in your business income. That's how you bring predictability to it. And then eventually you look and say, wow, for every 100 leads that we generate, right, we generate 10 conversations and it results in 1 closed transaction or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Which is that's called the 10% rule. I don't know if that meshes with your business or not, but on average, a lot of online stuff, 100 leads, 10 conversations, one deal, right?
No, that's exactly it. That's how you know how to turn the knobs in your business, right? Because if I know how many people you need to talk to make a certain number of to talk to a certain number of people. I mean, if I know how many leads I have to generate, so you can talk to a certain number of people, so you can make a certain number of offers and get X number of contracts. That goes back to marketing, right? All right,
yeah.
we need to turn up marketing to X so we can provide X number of leads per acquisition rep.
Yeah, and if they don't have enough leads, I'm sure then you say, okay, well, there's this outbound or there's all these old leads that you guys can call, right? Yeah. And you just kind of go through those, and then you might have a number for that. For every, 25 dials, you're going to have like 1 connection, and 5 connections will result in 1 contract, right? Whatever the number is, right, for you. But these, what's that?
No, follow-up is key.
Follow-up's key.
With you. Yep, go ahead.
And so this is we got a little into the nitty-gritty of it, but this is how you start understanding, like you said, turning the dials in the business. Mm-hmm. But to go back, right, it started with this belief, hey, I got to believe that this is actually something that's worthwhile building a business around. The answer is absolutely 100% yes, right? It helps generate 30, 60, 90-day income that helps pay for your family, your people, your tribe, right? But then there's a stage, which is the stage that you're at right now, where you're like, you know what? We can make money in this business. I understand how to make money in this business, but there's a difference between making money and building wealth.
Yep.
And I find that entrepreneurs start going through this journey where they're like, okay, great, I understand how to make money, right? Now, but I need to really accelerate my wealth building, because am I going to do this forever? Like, am I going to be like on this like treadmill the whole time, like just slaying deals, right? And the answer is no. Like, well, many people stay on that treadmill. By the way, they never become kind of like what I call awakened, right? Mm-hmm. But one day they wake up and say, "Damn, every time I sell one of these assets, I'm actually killing the golden goose." Yeah. They're good deals, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm killing the golden goose. And yeah, I'm getting paid today, but I'm not getting all those eggs for the future, those golden eggs. 100%. And so we need to start doing more of that. And then it goes on a journey. Like everybody, like the entrepreneur then goes, the business owner goes on a journey, which is where you guys are right now. You're like, okay, maybe what we do is flip 80 and we keep 20, right? Or we do 60 and we keep 40. And man, then it's like crazy. Then the game gets really interesting at that point. right?
Yeah, exactly. Because I basically just mirror everything that you just said. That's exactly right, right? Because you start looking at not just so cash flow, right? Where's your cash flow? Then you got just having assets and being able to leverage that, and then in this case, specific real estate, you start talking about taxes and things like that. How you can like be more open in those different things. And yeah, like you said, you build this machine that's just pumping out deals. And actually, quick story. It's actually a pretty short story of how I like it. That wasn't a like a very like it. I don't know. Something just bit me and told me like, man, we need to buy more of these. And what it was is we were selling the deal. Maybe it was a couple of deals, and like our phones were just blowing up. And I was like, man, I wonder what deal this is, right? And we were about to make like 40 grand on this deal, sell it, and I was like, oh, that's sweet. And something just told me to start thinking. I don't know why I didn't think about this before. I'm sure I had the capacity to, but I was like, let me look at the numbers on this deal, right? And I looked at the numbers, and I was like, well, technically, we could buy, and it was already rented out and everything else, right? So I'm like, we could buy this property, right? And not even forego that income. We could buy this property, do a little work to it. It's going to appraise. I think we got it like 50. We had some offers around like 85, maybe a little bit higher, something like that. And this property, a little work, maybe 10, 12 grand worth of work, it appraised for like 150, right? We could just burn that all day and actually, still make, and then, you were about taxes and stuff like that.
You keep your money, you keep the asset, like you're like, duh.
I don't know why it took so long, but after that, I was
because what happens is we get in this like kick of like, we got to learn how to, I call it ringing the bell. Like you got to first get through this mindset piece. Like, is this possible? Then you start making money. I call it ringing the bell. And you fall into this rhythm of like cash flow. And then something happens. It's a little something. You start asking a different question.
Yep.
Right. Yep. And the question then reveals itself, and you're like, damn, okay. I can burr this thing, right? Which is the way to start building wealth. Whether you're an agent, you're an investor, it's the same game, right? Like the wholesale game is the same as the agent game. It's the same game. And you're just taking earned income and you're buying assets. The difference is the investor is in the path of those good deals, and they can cherry pick them, right? They say, oh, you know what? We'll wholesale these, but our investment thesis is we want to hold properties in this part of Detroit or North Carolina, or wherever. And if it falls in that area and we could burr it, we're keeping it. And that becomes your thesis, right?
Yep, 100%.
So let's wrap up with one question. I heard you say something and it resonated with me. And you said that's not in our culture, right? So let's talk a little bit about culture and what that means to you and what your culture is all about. Because ultimately you manifest your business, right? It's a reflection of you. So let's talk about your culture. What are some of your core values?
So that's an excellent question, because for a while it took me because you see these companies, even like say like a Keller Williams or something. I was just at like someone was doing an event and I saw their core values on the wall, and for the longest it took me like, I don't know, I could never just solidify, all right, what are our core values? Because you get like stuff that's like, what we consider common sense, which sometimes those are your core values, but then sometimes it's like, all right, man, we're just throwing stuff and it takes away from the whole, right? So you got things like integrity. That's one of our core values, right? Because one of my things is, and I tell everybody on the team this, like I don't micromanage and don't babysit, right? But once I understand, like, because we do very good training and we hire you, make sure you're capable. At that point, you can ask. It doesn't mean you can't ask for help, but we're not over the shoulder every point of the way, making sure you're doing what you say you're going to do, right? So I think that goes back to integrity, like that kind of cross between integrity and accountability. But that's one of our core values, right? Because I actually put that more in the category of integrity than accountability. I think it falls into both. But if you say you're going to do something and you don't do it, yes, you're not being accountable. But what does that mean about your integrity when you look at the heart of it, right? When no one's looking, no one's over your back, making sure you're doing what you're supposed to do. But I had a contractor at the house and a personal residence doing some work for us, and it was like, if this was your house, you would not have done it this way. But because it's not your house, and he had the approach of, well, if you think it's okay, it's done. not doing it to a certain standard, and that lowers your integrity. So integrity is one very big one. Coming from my story, like perseverance, right? You can see why, right? It took me almost 2 years, plus other stuff, and I didn't go that deep into that story, man. I'm talking about, I mean, living in my mom's basement was not like luxurious, you know what I mean? you know, I'm talking, I could go deep, man. And you know,
Yeah.
it wasn't just like, oh, I'm just over it. No, it was like tough.
Well,
man.
I also know that you're a thinker. So what happens with thinkers sometimes is they go into dark places in their head, right? And then sometimes they can like overanalyze every situation, like, and like, so it's a battle of the mind, right?
Yep.
It's a battle of the mind. But once you wrestle it and you pin it down and you slay it, like that person that's a thinker and then win the battle of their mind, dude, the sky's the limit at that point.
100%. 100%. So you hit the hit. So integrity, right? Perseverance. I can't be around quitters, right? If you're gonna hit a wall and I'm out, I mean, you got like that's life at this point, right?
Yeah.
And the big part, and then I start getting to deeper stuff. What I'm gonna go into our next one, which is kind of one that we made up, where it's manifest reality. You gotta understand. Now that's when it starts to encompass accountability as well. But you gotta understand where you're at today. You're there because of you, right? And what got you to where you are today is not gonna get you to where you want to go tomorrow, right? So you gotta understand that this is how you manifest part of the way. So a lot of people, law of attraction, they just think, oh, it's just, I just gotta think positively, right? PMA, and all of a sudden I'm gonna manifest something. No, that's not how it works. You gotta do the work. But part of it is manifesting your own reality. So really understanding the big part of how that encompasses your life, right? Again, being accountable for what you're doing, but understand that you're the one that got the power, right? There's no one else that can come in and just take from you. I mean, there's things that can happen in life, right? But if you are, if you persevere, right, in that, then you'll be able to create the life that you want. And that's a big part of it. I mean, actually, again, I don't know how much time we got, but like again, oh, perfect. So a quick story about manifestation. Before I knew it was like a thing and I read Napoleon Hill and all this stuff, right? It was a car, that same car that was 12 years old when I was driving around, like whatever. It was a time where I wanted that. And that was like 8 years before. But point is, I was working, I was a co-op, and I used this car as a Monte Carlo. I really wanted it, right? It got to the point where I knew everything about this car. I mean, literally every day I would just stare at Auto Trader, look at all the different cars, look at all the different styles. And naturally, I want this car. Man, it'd be sweet if I could get this color. Man, I want to get the SS model with all the fully loaded. Oh, man, I know it's going to be too much, but the price really need to be around here. And I was not like intentionally doing this, right, with intention. I was just doing it because that's what I wanted to do. It felt good looking at this stuff, right? So it took me 3 months, and I'm talking about I couldn't afford the car. Like that car, I couldn't afford it. I couldn't afford it, man. That car was like 15 grand, like you bought it, and like my budget was like 8 at the height, right? And I knew, I was like, but I just kept doing it. It took literally 3 months. One of the cars came up. I was like, oh man, it was already more than what I wanted, but it was the closest that I had seen. And then we went out to the property, did some negotiating with my mom and dad. He said no, we left, and then we kind of made another offer, and then we got it. And I got it for like $7,500. And I knew nothing about manifestation. I was just happy about it, right? Then, I'm reading Napoleon Hill, and you got Bob Proctor, rest in peace, and stuff like that. And even at that time, I didn't register, so I thought about like, damn, that's how I got my first car. Well, not my first car, but the first car I actually wanted, because I literally did everything that you could do. So it was like I was literally brought into my reality when, like, really it shouldn't have been, right? Like I really couldn't afford the car, right? But
Vision,
it 100% happened. So
100%.
Exactly. Did you just say vision?
Vision, man. That's what vision is, right? It's like in an organization, like, the leader has to have that vision. That vision needs to be manifested, right? It needs to be dreamed about, felt, talked about, obsessed about, and then you got to do the work. And what happens is you literally like create what it is, right? Whether it's your house, whether it's the car, whether it's your significant other, the business, the people in your life. Like literally, I did this one where one time I was looking for somebody, And I said, the more specific I am, the better. I said, I'm looking for a Division I college athlete. And if they're, because I wrestled D1 in college, I was a wrestler, right? Like if they were a wrestler Division I, this is why. If they were an Eagle Scout or Boy Scout, like I literally like wrote out everything that I was looking for, right? And I sent it out to the universe, emailed it to everybody that I knew. And this guy got a hold of it and he reads it and he's like, Division I college wrestler, check, right? 10 plus years sales experience, check, right? Eagle Scout, check, right? And literally the guy was like, it's like as if you willed this into, I was like, yeah, man, I manifested what who I was looking for at that time. And you could do that for roles within the organization, for your business in general, for everything. Like I'm a fan, right? I'm a fan. I'm a big fan of that.
It's all, and it's funny, not funny, but it's interesting. You said vision because that's the next core value. So just mirror everything you just said. That's everything I was going to say.
Well, yeah, okay. So you said you started off with integrity, right?
Perseverance. Yeah.
What was the next one?
Perseverance.
Perseverance. Okay.
Manifest in reality. Your own
manifest.
Reality,
yeah, manifest it. Okay.
Vision.
And then vision. And then how's vision different than the manifesting reality?
So it does excellent. So it manifesting reality goes more internal in terms of like it's really focused on that you have the power, right? That's focus on manifest is really manifest your own reality, but is your power. Vision is more so what you're talking about. Like, hey, here's where we're gonna go, right? We're gonna persevere to get there. We're not gonna like just screw over people to get there. We're gonna have integrity. We're gonna be a weight. We're gonna hold ourselves to a certain extent, but this is where we're going. Right, and we're all paddling in the same direction. So we talk about vision again. That's what, like it's the bigger picture of where we're going.
I love it.
Man, it's crazy that you brought that up. But yeah, 100% what it is.
And is that it? Those are the core values. Do you have any?
Yeah. Yeah, no, those are there's subcomponents that we dive deeper. I think that's what helped me, and it's a living thing, right? So over time we may add, we may change, but I think those were like the core of what we wanted to do, and then from there it just came down to like I didn't want to tell people like, oh, honesty, right? Probably shouldn't be on the team if you're not honest, right? If you're not, again, that's under integrity, but. I didn't want to put a lot of stuff in there that takes away where you got 15 core values and
yeah, you gotta keep it simple because sometimes people just don't. I'm a big person that uses I think of VIP, right? For you, vision, integrity, persistence. That's VIP. And what was the other one I'm missing? I'm missing one. Manifestation, VIPM. I play around with those words and I try to create some kind of really simple thing. Like we always say we're a forward culture, right? Family first, own it, raving fan service, work hard, always be learning, results matter, do the right thing kind of culture. We're a forward culture.
Nice. That's amazing. I had to figure something out around that. We haven't done anything.
Yeah, and that comes, like you said, it just kind of comes with over time. You start saying, oh, this is part of this core value. We can add it in, but you want to keep it simple so that you could transfer it right to the team. Right.
I like that though. VIP. We'll figure something out.
Well, dude, I love it. Hey, Phil, dude, you shared an hour and 13 minutes with me, and literally it's gone by like this.
Yeah, it does.
I love our conversation today. It's going to help so many people on so many different levels. There's so many like little nuggets and sound bites that we'll be able to take out of this. I thank you. Grid thanks you. If people want to get a hold of you, right? If people want to send you a deal, right? We already know Metro Detroit, right?
100%.
You're the guy, and also Raleigh, North Carolina, Charlottesville. Was that right?
Both Charlotte and Raleigh. Yep.
Okay. So I want you to think of Phil. And I'm going to have all your different social media handles below. If somebody wants to get a hold of you, what would be the best way?
All right. So if you just want to hit me, because people hit me up all the time for like mentorship, and I think that's a big thing as far as giving back and helping individuals. But Instagram is Phillip with 1L _ Blake _ REI. You can hit me up there. If you're trying to send us deals, I'll get with Rob and we'll have like, you know, where you can go to the website or, you know, contact Dispo and whatnot if you just want to work together. And then yeah, those would be the main two there. I'll give you my email too. We'll put that all below.
Awesome. And Phil, one last thing. How's your little baby boy? Was it a boy or a girl? I can't remember. Baby girl.
Yeah, so
how's your baby girl?
9 weeks yesterday. She's perfectly healthy, feeling good, and no, it's awesome. So that's our first child. Thank you for asking, by the way. I had COVID for 10 days, man.
Oh.
Yeah. I literally left the hospital with COVID and slept for 10 days.
Oh man, yeah. That's crazy. That's crazy.
No, she's good.
That's awesome, dude. It's crazy because 9 weeks. I remember. I mean, my little one is 20 years old now, which is crazy.
Wow.
Right? Time goes by fast.
Yeah.
Make sure you buy her a house. You name it her. What's her name?
What was that?
What's your daughter's name?
I think it's breaking up, man.
Oh, I said, what's your daughter's name?
Can you hear? Maybe it's, I think you're asking what my daughter's name is.
That's it. That's what I'm asking. Yes.
I'm breaking this. I mean, we did pretty good.
We did pretty good. We did pretty good up until this point.
Yeah. Sorry, man.
That's okay. That's okay. We'll edit this last piece.
Sorry about that. Paris is her name. Paris Alexandra.
Okay. Well, you named the house Paris Alexander.
Right.
and anyhow, man, we'll edit the last piece. We did good with the audio up until this time. So
man, it was crazy. He was like, what's your name? So I was like, did he ask me what's my name? And I'm like, wait. But then I started to see the video mess up a little bit. So we made it. We got pretty close to it.
We made it, man. Hey, Phil, thanks so much, man. I appreciate it.
Yes,
you
sir.
Enjoy the rest of the day, and hopefully I'll see you at one of the mini meetups sometime soon.
Yeah, man. I don't know when the next one is, but I want to make it out and we can chat, man. Those are always pretty fun. I don't know if you made it to the last one, but I want to get to the next one for sure.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna do one. There is guy, what's his name? Lake House.
Oh yeah. I saw it, but I didn't pay a lot of attention to it.
Yeah. Anyhow, sometime soon we'll have to catch up, and I'll have to fill you in on all the stuff that we're doing. But I appreciate your time today, man. You take care.
Man, I appreciate the invite, man. Anytime.
Okay, Phil. Take care, man. Bye-bye.